Welcome to the Irish NFL show. We're on the doorstep of the conference championship games, and as we're recording here on Saturday, we're a little over 24 hours away, and we thought who better to spend some quality time between now and kickoff with than Fox Sports analyst and three-time Super Bowl champion Mark Schlereth, making a very welcome return to the Irish NFL show, Mark, and we're really, really happy to have you back. You're very good to spend some time with us. How have you been?
I've been great. Thank you so much for having me. This morning was great. I'm down here celebrating my granddaughter's 12th birthday in Tampa, Florida over the weekend. And it gave us an opportunity. That was my wife that just walked by, but gave us an opportunity with to sit down with all three of my grandkids. I've got a granddaughter, Quinny, that's going to be 12 on Monday. And then a granddaughter, Drew, who's 8, and a grandson, Zane, who is 4, and gave us an opportunity to sit down and look up Ireland on the map. And so we got to discuss a little bit about Europe, a little bit about Ireland. We read some stuff, so it was kind of a good little learning curve here in Tampa, Florida. So thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Our pleasure. And can you please wish Quinny a happy birthday, or as we'd say in Irish, La Breha Honagwich, a Quinny, happy birthday to her. You can record that and play it back for her. We'll give pronunciation lessons the next time around.
All
Give you a
right,
little Irish
great.
lesson. You're in Tampa, Mark. So before we get into the conference championship game, some interesting moves on the coaching carousel there. Liam Cohen did a little bit of willy won't he, but eventually he's headed to Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's really interesting because as I looked at the jobs, Chicago I thought definitely was the best job available. And I talked to Ben Johnson about that job, very excited about taking that job, very young, dynamic quarterback. But you look at Jacksonville, and obviously, it is Jacksonville, Florida, so it's probably one of the less from a destination standpoint, one of the lesser NFL cities, so to speak. But no offense to the people in Jacksonville, but yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. But like Trevor Lawrence has had moments in this league where he's been very good. And I'm not just talking about a game or two. I'm talking about, even in the season before last, he started the year at 8-3, and then they fell apart and they've kind of fallen apart ever since then. So he's had some moments in this league that have been very good. And so to win in this league, the biggest determinant obviously is you got to have a quarterback. You got to have a quarterback that plays, and every rule is bent toward that quarterback having success. So if you don't have one, legitimately, it's really, really hard to win in the league without a guy that can really execute in critical moments, without a guy that can push the ball in third downs, without a guy that that can convert in those kind of critical moments and play well in the red zone. So you really have to have one. So when you look at Jacksonville. The fact that you get assigned there in Jacksonville, that you've got a quarterback who's had some success, is young and is athletically really talented, and they got rid of their GM as well. So they fired Trent Baalke, who's a guy that it comes with a certain amount of controversy, if you will, or not, maybe not controversy is not that the right word, but scrutiny at the very least. And so you've got an opportunity to build something there, kind of the way you want it built. So I understand. The people in Tampa are pissed right now because he agreed to come back as the highest paid offensive coordinator. But he got this opportunity, and I don't blame him, man. There's only 32 of these jobs, right? They don't come around very often. You got to take that opportunity when you get it.
Why did you think the Chicago job was so attractive? Was it the quarterback?
Well, the quarterback has got a lot of growing to do, but yeah, he's exceptionally talented. Now, one of the things I always say, and the guys on my TV show in New York always make fun of me for it, but uh, talent is wasted on talented people. I watch so many talented people that just don't understand the game, that just don't ever amount to much, that are like I can't tell you how many guys that I played with that should have been Hall of Famers that just were guys that ended up being in the league for 3 or 4 or 5 years. So, um, there's so much more to it than talent, and talent is where it starts, and talent's the easiest thing in the world to see. And so there's no question about the talent. Now it becomes timing. Now it becomes execution. Now it becomes can you lead, a huddle? Can you lead those guys? Do they have your respect? Will you play tough? All those different things. But I think defensively they've got a really good, solid core unit on the defensive side of the ball on all three levels of their defense. So I think that was a big part of it. I think when you talk about guys that are the receivers and tight ends, and they've got a lot of talent out there as well. Offensive line needs to be fixed. They need to be a much better group, a much better unit up front. But um, Yeah, I think that just from just a pure talent standpoint and kind of how they were trending, before they kind of went, they were 4-2 last year and then went on this epic losing streak of like 10 straight or something. But yeah, I think definitely had the makings of, the best opportunities there in Chicago.
I think it's interesting that the Bears hired the hotshot offensive coordinator, which typically hasn't been the way that Chicago has gone with their coaching vacancies in the past. But and this allows us a smooth segue, hopefully, into talking about the Commanders and the Eagles. You look at what Dan Quinn has done this year, the retread head coach, the guy that had been seen as maybe maxing out in his job in his time at Atlanta, gets another go around, and he's a man transformed. I was wondering whether GMs and ownerships might look slightly differently in this coaching cycle because of what Dan Quinn has managed to achieve and is still achieving in Washington.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, ownership gets enamored by youth and by the offensive side of the ball because, like I said earlier, all the rules are bent towards the offense having success. And there's this misnomer out there that the youth, a young coach is going to connect with younger players, and it's going to be, it's going to be one of those things that, oh, it just makes sense, right? They can speak that language, they know how to text and, send emojis and all this stuff that doesn't, it really doesn't mean anything. You either have the ability to build relationships or you don't. You either have the ability to communicate or you don't. Doesn't matter what your age is. Do you connect with your players? Do your players respect you? Do your players see you as an authority figure? Do they have a certain amount of fear, both like biblical fear, like reverence and respect, and also fear that, hey, man, I'm no nonsense. Like, I expect certain things. If I don't get them, you're not going to play for me. Like, those are things that have to be present for you to be successful in this league. And I can tell you, Dan Quinn is a friend. I've known Dan Quinn for many years, and he's a guy that has this unbelievable ability to relate to players, demand excellence from players. There are a bunch of things that he talks about all the time are non-negotiables, the way we play the game. But there is a genuine connection, a genuine love, and a genuine respect that his players play with. And Dan Quinn will tell you, or he would tell you, and he's told me, we're not, from a talent standpoint, we're not where we want to be yet. We're not the most talented group, but man, we check all the other boxes, right? And we're talented enough. And they have shown that. And their young quarterback, Jaden Daniels, is just, you want to talk about. I used to tell my son this all the time when he became a professional pitcher in the big leagues. And I used to say, just because you play a pro sport doesn't make you a professional. You need to learn how to be a professional. And there are varying degrees of professionalism in the National Football League. And it's another one of those things about talent. When you're uber talented, sometimes you just don't learn how to study, learn how to prepare, learn how to, you know, dot all your I's and cross all your T's, learn the basic nuance of the game, understand the game more globally, have a better global perspective on the game, understand where the problems are, where your problems are, where everybody else's problems are, what's going to, like it's all that stuff that makes you goes from, average to good, good to great, great to Hall of Fame. And those guys just have an ability to kind of process everything. And so you have to be a professional to learn how to process all that stuff. And when you talk about Jaden Daniels, that's one of the most professional guys I've ever witnessed. I mean, that dude is a football junkie. And he gets on and I got on his Oculus. I don't know if you've read these stories
Yeah.
about his virtual reality Oculus goggles. I got on his goggles. So Cliff Kingsbury records the whole game plan on, on audio, right? And so it's all the formations. It's like trips, trips right, nasty, F or H left outside, two jet. It's like two jet branch, buffalo, right, or all go. It is so he hears it, and then he repeats it, and then you see them line up, and you're actually in the stadium that you're playing. So like the signage is up, and you're facing that defense with those numbers and those players, and then you're just orchestrating. Okay, here's what we're running we're running a through, we're running pick curl, and we're running a now route down here. We're running 8 yard out with a go on the outside. That's the play I just called. So that's what it would be. And here's my protection. We're sliding, left to the will linebacker or to the nickel guy out there. Where depending on their nickel, they would probably be in a nickel front. Like so, you see it all, and the guy spends like 3 hours a day going through the game plan stuff and he's the first. He walks in at 5 in the morning or before, and he spends He goes home in the afternoons, and all he does is put his goggles on and goes through game plan stuff. Like the guy is committed, and really cool to watch a young player have that kind of level of commitment, but that kind of level of fun. He loves playing. He's truly a little football junkie.
Yeah, I got to confess, Mark, with the true fickleness of the fan, right? I was all invested in the Lions story this year. I love the redemption arc for Jared Goff. I love everything that Dan Campbell has done there with his coaching staff, and I just, even though I'm a Bears fan by blood, couldn't have been happier to see the Lions where they were. Wanted them to go the whole way. Of course, I've unhitched my wagon now because you look across the way, and this Commander story is every bit as romantic and every bit
Hmm.
as it tugs on the heartstrings in every bit the same way. And but it all comes down ultimately to Jaden. I know it doesn't all just come down to Jaden Daniels. This is a rookie who's not playing like a rookie. To your point, like it's not
Yeah,
like they've broken down the offense into the most easily digestible chunks just to get him through. They trust him and they believe in him,
yeah,
and they're not in this. And I hate this phrase, and the guys on the show will always slag me for bringing it up. I hate the phrase playing with house money. You're in a conference championship game. You're not
yeah.
playing with house money. You're playing to win the Super Bowl.
I will tell you, yes, you're 100% right. But I've been, uh, I got to play in three Super Bowls, and I was a decided favorite in two of them. And after those two victories, that felt like relief. It didn't feel like joy. It felt like relief because we were 8.5 point favorites. I mean, we were a much better team. My first Super Bowl in Washington, playing against the Bills, and then my third Super Bowl in Miami, playing against the Atlanta Falcons. We were big favorites, and we were the better team by a long shot. And so that felt more like relief. I will tell you, Super Bowl 32. Denver versus Green Bay, where we were started the week at 13-point underdogs, ended of the week at 11.5 point at kickoff, 11.5 point underdogs. That did feel like house money. There was this kind of attitude of, we're supposed to lose this game, so screw it. Like, let's just go roll. Let's just go show them. I mean, we felt like we were a better team, but anyhow, there is. I'll give you grief, and you can give you like I'm a really good loser. I'm a gracious loser, but pardon my French. I'm a dick when it comes to winning. I'll let you know that I'm winning. And so let your guys know that I talked about house money, and there's a truth. There's a truth to it. I will tell you, like Jaden Daniels, you talked about it. The amazing thing is, and I listened to the broadcast, they talk about, the RPO game, the run pass option game and the bubble screen game, and how much it's almost like triple option. You can hand it off, you can run to the edge, you can throw the bubble, da da da. And then I went back and watched all the coaches' film. Jaden Daniels cut Detroit up from the pocket. He made a bunch of deep throws, deep over to De'Ami Brown. They had a deep corner route from the opposite side to De'Ami Brown. He had the one bubble screen, but it was against blitz. Threw it into the blitz to Terry McLaurin, who went 60 some odd yards for a touchdown. So um, he orchestrated, like he was dicing people up from the pocket. He did a really good job. So guy really knows his stuff. And it's funny you said it because I like Dan Campbell's been a good friend of mine, and I've known him for years and years and years, and had such a affinity and such a connection to that team. I've done a bunch of their games, and so it was really kind of bittersweet for me because I thought they would win that game, and obviously I played in Washington, started my first 6 years there, and I'm so proud of Dan Quinn and what he's done. So there was this joyous feeling of Washington winning this, and how just dismal it's been under Dan Snyder's reign for so many years, and to see what they're doing right now, really cool stuff. But at the same time, like I had a bit of disappointment for what happened to Dan Campbell because he's such a good dude. He's such like that staff. The entire staff is great now. Ben Johnson being in Chicago, and Aaron Glenn going out to coach the Jets, and they're losing assistants and everything else. But yeah, it was kind of bittersweet for me.
You mentioned Dan Snyder, and I was kind of smiling as you mentioned him because I saw a story on ESPN this morning relating how Dan Snyder hates the success of the Commanders and is in denial about it. He must be the only one who hates it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, dude is like there are guys that are just bad human beings, and he's just a bad human being. So I have no respect in um what he did to that franchise. And it's interesting when I played there. that franchise was a jewel in the crown of the NFL. And Dan Snyder took it over, and he just he's a bad owner. And there's some bad owners, I get it. Um, but just drove that franchise into the ground, and it's so cool to see new ownership, the way they have embraced us former players, the way they have reached out to us former players and brought us back into the fold and wanted to be celebrate the history of the Washington Redskins and the transition to the Commanders, and it's really been cool. Um, we had a reunion this year, and they were retiring Daryl Green, who's a
Mm.
dear friend of mine. My wife and I, as a matter of fact, are the parents to their 8 grandkids. So Daryl and I are good buddies, and my wife and his wife Jewel are great buddies. And so we went there because they were retiring his jersey and this whole celebration, and like everybody returned, like all the former guys returned, and that has not been the case since Dan Snyder owned the team. It just wasn't. Guys didn't want to be a part of it. Guys were like, "This guy's a jerk," and so it's really cool to see kind of them embrace that history, embrace, um, that what has been for many years, and to see Dan Campbell do that because, like I said, he's such a great relational human being. That's been fun for me.
Looking over at where the Commanders have to go, they visit the Link, which, as we know, is not an easy place to win at the best of times. And yet, they don't travel just in hope, right? They travel with a certain amount of expectation. They know what it takes to beat the Eagles. And I'm digesting the point you made about talent earlier on, because it's hard to think of a more talented team in the NFL than the Eagles. I know we saw the Ravens exit last weekend. Personally, I would have had them nearly neck and neck in terms of what they got on the roster. They're stacked at all levels. If you're looking at it on paper, you're probably giving the Eagles the edge in many of the different departments, perhaps bar quarterback. But that's not going to mean anything come kickoff time.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you say it. I always joke around if the games were played on paper, I'd have spent a lot less time on an operating table. They're just not. But you're right. Like I could make a compelling argument that in regards to just pure talent on the roster, the Eagles at every position, bar one, are the more talented football team. And the one position they're not is quarterback, but that's the one position that matters the most, right? And so, their offensive line is beastly. Their running back and Saquon Barkley's unbelievable. When you talk AJ Brown, when you talk about Devontae Smith, when you talk about Dallas Goddard as the receivers, they're incredibly loaded there. So they are a loaded football team. Defensively, Jalen Carter has been unblockable for about the last month and a half of the season. Zach Bond, the middle linebacker position, I mean, that guy's an all pro. He went from a special teamer in New Orleans to an all pro, and he's played his butt off. Their defensive backs from Dre Bly, the Quinyon Mitchell kid has just been one of the best DBs in all of football as a rookie. So I mean, they are a legitimately loaded football team. There is no question. But the
And you got
difference,
to credit Howie Roseman, Mark, when you can
yeah,
draft a white defensive back, and even that guy's playing out of his skin. Cooper
yeah.
DeJean, he's had a great
Yeah,
season.
the gene has been great. Yeah, so they are loaded. I mean, there's no question they're loaded. Now, Jalen Hurts has got the knee, and it really becomes to me it comes down to this. And I've talked to so many defensive coordinators over time with quarterbacks that can really get on the move and run and do those things, and just the issues that presents for you as a defensive coordinator. And I tell you, what they would love to do in Washington is they would love to make Jalen Hurts drop back and, drop back in the pocket and throw it 35 plus times. And I think from a game planning standpoint, they're like, if we can do that, we can create a turnover or two, an extra possession for our offense. So, ultimately, you say, well, you got to stack the box, you got to stop the run. Yes, but you stack the box and you stop the run, and Saquon makes one ridiculous jump cut, and he's gone 80 because you're not catching him. So, like, there is, even go back to last week, every carry, like he had 20, I think 26 carries. If you take away the two long runs, they kept him to right about three, maybe just a shade under 3 yards per carry. But he breaks one for 60 something, breaks one for 78. I mean, that's like, and when you're stacked in a box like that, when you break that level, when one guy is out of assignment, even by 8 inches, then you're going to hit your head on goalposts because there's one safety in the middle of the field. That guy's not going to down. He's not going to chase down Barkley. So it's just is really interesting. So it's twofold, right? It comes back to this kind of nature or the complementary nature of football is you got to do what you did Detroit because Detroit ran the snot out of the ball last week in the divisional round against the Commanders. But what happened? You Gibbs had 14 carries for 105 yards. He averaged 7.5 yards a carry, but he only got the ball 14 times. Why? Because every time Washington got the ball, they scored. And it gets you into this, uh-oh, we're in a shootout. We got to throw the ball. And Jalen takes a ton of sacks. He holds the ball as long, if not longer, than just about every quarterback in the league. Um, I think that's a recipe for success for Washington if they can possess the ball, run it, and because they're doing that and playing eight-man fronts, if they can keep the attempts of Saquon under 20, around 17 or 18, they got a chance. But I'm just going to tell you the way defense works. If he gets over 20, 25, somewhere in that area, he's going to break a couple. And you usually break them late. Sometimes you'll break one early, but you usually break them late, and you break them late because guys are tired. And guys, so it's like a boxing match where you take a lot of body blows. Eventually, your hands come down, you get knocked out, and that's exactly the equivalent of running the game. That running the ball. That's why it drives me crazy. Offensive coordinators that'll say, because these guys have never played, right? They'll be like the guys who say this just to me don't understand football. Oh, well, they were in an eight-man box. You hear this all the time. So we were going to bang our heads on the wall. We had free access to the outside. We had one-on-one coverage to the outside. So, we're just going to take our free access. And I say, baloney. You have to know how to run against eight-man boxes because that's all you get in the red zone. Because you're not worried about somebody throwing it over your head. So you're getting safeties with heels at 8 yards. They're one step away from being on or two steps away from being on the line of scrimmage. It's effectively an 8 or 9 man box. So if you don't know how to run it in the field, how are you going to know how to run it in the red zone? And so it just is one of these things that really irritates me with coaches. And the good teams understand if we can stay true, if we can stay committed, if we can keep going, and they have to understand the overall benefit of that, how it wears down a defense, how it slows down a pass rush, all those different things. So you can't, like, there's a lot of coordinators in this league. As a matter of fact, I was consulting with the team, and the team was asking me to consult with them in the run game. This is in the off season, and I said I got on, got sat down with this head coach, and said I really brought you in here, so we could really talk about the run game, the philosophical approach and this, that, and the other. I want to be a really good run team, and da 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 da. And I asked him point blank, "Do you?" And he goes, "Yeah," because he's a head coach, he's a play caller. I go, but do you? And he goes, "Yeah, that's why I brought you in here. I want to really go through the run game." I go, "But do you really want to run the ball? Do you really?" And he goes, "Yes." I go, "But really, do you?" And he was just like, What do you? Why are we having this conversation? Why did I bring you here?" And I go, "Because you'll run the ball 3 times in a row. You get 2 yards a carry, and you'll throw your hands up and be like, 'We can't run the ball.' But I go, you let that shitty quarterback of yours throw 7 incompletions in a row, and you don't even think twice about it." And I go, until you change your view, until you understand the benefits of nasty, hardcore 2 yard runs, you will never be good at running the ball ever. And we had a long laugh, and he went, "All right, touche. I'm guilty as charged. Okay, let's get down to business, right?" And so it's really more than run. It's a mindset more than is anything else.
You bring me to a point, Mark, that we discussed on the show, and I'd be very interested in your take on this because if I'm looking for reasons to believe in the Commanders to win, and actually all four of us when we were doing our previews on Thursday picked the Commanders to win this game, so hope triumphs over expectation as far as we're concerned. But one of the areas of weakness that I was looking at from an Eagles perspective is Kellen Moore's play calling. I'm not sure in a tight spot that's the guy you want calling the play. Certainly based on
Mm.
the jeopardy he put Jalen Hurts in towards the back end of that game last week. I'm throwing my hands up looking at that going, what are you doing? Run the
Right.
ball.
Yeah, yeah. Those are always things you look at, and I understand. You talk about that naked boot that they try to run, um, and obviously. if it works, it's a brilliant call, right? But if it doesn't, you're an idiot. Um, but again, I always we get so enamored with analytics and going for it on fourth down and all the different things that we talk about now, as football fans. But I am one of those dudes that I just really believe in running the ball, eating up clock, putting pressure on a defense, putting pressure on the other coaches over there. And so um, I agree with that. I totally agree with that issue. The other thing is if Jalen Hurts can't run the tush push, if Jalen Hurts can't get outside the pocket, if Jalen Hurts is not a great runner, he hurt that knee early in that game. He had 6 carries for 71 yards, or excuse me, 6 carries for 78 yards before he hurt his knee. He had 1 carry for -1 yard after he hurt his knee. And the value that he provides, not only, with him running the football, and you saw him run that quarterback counter, that they scored on, but the value he has in the zone read game of holding the backside of a defense so that Saquon Barkley has multiple cuts. There's value in that. And Joe Witt Jr., their defense coordinator, had said yesterday or the day before yesterday, he goes, "Hey, listen, man, if he runs, we're going to treat him like a runner. We're going to hit him and we're going to get after him." And that's the way it should be. You should do that, even if you risk a 15-yard penalty. That it's worth the risk to me. And so all of a sudden, if you get to the point where you basically bail out of your offense and your structure that has made you successful, now you're doing something that you really haven't done all season long. And I'm not saying that they can't. I'm not saying that Jalen can't drop back and throw it, but that's not how they've been successful. And so that's not his strongest asset. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how they play this and exactly how Washington attacks that quarterback. But for me, I'm 100% like in my day, there was a certain amount of frontier justice. And if you knew a guy was hurt, you attack that dude. Like you knew a guy was coming off a hamstring injury, man. I'm telling you what, we ran deep. We ran a bunch of deep nines on him. Or you knew a guy was, nursing a knee injury, man. We get on him and cut his ass. Let's see where you are. And that's there's a certain gladiator nature to it, but I think that's what sets. That's why not everybody plays. You got to be a little bit touched. So I like that aspect of football.
We all do, I think, especially those of us who haven't played it, who never stepped into the gladiatorial arena. When you talk about 15-yard penalties, you bring us nicely to the Chiefs and Bills game and the risk of hitting a particular quarterback. How are you going to
Mhm.
stop the Chiefs from getting that three-peat if you're the Bills? I know no one will be more happy than you if the Chiefs don't get
Yeah.
don't get that third one.
Yeah, there's no question. I've been mixing up with Chief fans for a while now, but um, there is that aspect of this game. Again, just piggybacking on what we talked about with Jalen Hurts. If you're gonna get a foul, get your money's worth. And I hate the late slide by the quarterback. Um, I hate like I can't tell you how many times I've seen Patrick Mahomes tiptoe down the sideline, act like he's going to step out, and then when you ease off, he goes another 10 yards. So to me, if he's there, lambaste the dude,
We,
try to
we, we talked
decapitate the
we,
dude.
we talked about this on the show on Tuesday, and I said, look,
Yeah,
let him try and win the game from the blue tent. I'll take the 15-yard penalty if as you say,
right.
you can get your value out of it. He put himself in that situation, and you pays your money and you take your choice.
Yeah. So like that's the way I would approach it. If I was the Buffalo Bills, the decided advantage to me is there's a couple of advantages. The Bills quietly have one of the best O lines in football, and they got one of the best running games in football. And you go back to Week 11 when the Bills beat the Chiefs 30-21. Um, it's really kind of the tale of two seasons for the Chiefs and the Bills. At that point, the Bills ran it all over Kansas City. To that point, Kansas City was the best run defense in football. And since that point, going into that game, they were giving up like 89 yards a game rushing. Coming out of that game, they've been giving up like 127 to 130 yards. I don't know the exact number, but it's like 125, 127, something like that per game. The Bills, on the other hand, coming out of that game, have been rushing for about 150 yards a game. And the Bills have a pretty unique, like they run a bunch of counter, they run power, they run center counter, they run a bunch of different stuff, but they run a lot of tackle trap inside stuff as well. But what really sets them apart is red zone scoring. And that's where Josh Allen comes in. He becomes a big part of their red zone run game. And they use him in quarterback power, meaning they can get an extra blocker front side. And so, you end up creating a numbers count advantage for yourself as an offense when your quarterback can run. And the guy's 6'5" at 250. So he's not afraid to put his noggin on people and run them over. And so when you look at red zone scoring, Kansas City, I think, is number two in the league at about 73% scoring in the red zone. Um, and Kansas City's in the like the 20s at 53%. So it's that run game that really, really, I think, gives an advantage to the Buffalo Bills. Can they take it? We'll see. And I also wonder because the penalty stuff is interesting. Like I'm like, do I believe there's a conspiracy? We want the Chiefs to win. No. But do I believe superstar quarterbacks get favorable calls? Yes. I saw it happen with Tom Brady. The Kansas City Chiefs fans used to bitch and moan all the time about Tom Brady getting favorable calls, and now the shoe's on the other foot. But you look at the discrepancy in the last 11 playoff games, it's remarkable. I mean, it is remarkable. It's 2-1, just about 2-1 in penalties, four against, and it's almost 2-1 in yardage, four against. And I'm like, okay, like I understand when you tell me during the regular season, well, it's skewed because the Chiefs are a much better team than everybody else they play. And so they make less mistakes. And I go, okay, I'll buy that. I'll buy that. But we're talking about playoffs. And it's in the last 11 playoff games, the Chiefs have been penalized 36 times, their opponents 66 times, and it's 300 yards to almost just to like 550 yards in penalty yardage. So it's a big discrepancy. And I'm like, these are playoff teams we're talking about, and it shouldn't be that wide a margin. So, I just, again, I'm not saying there's any conspiracy because I don't believe there is. I really don't. But I do believe that Patrick Mahomes gets more calls because Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes, and I understand that, but I don't I don't like it. So it'll be interesting to see exactly. I know the league has heard it. I know they've heard the complaints. I know they've looked at it, and I know they looked at discrepancies. And so it'll be interesting for me to watch how this game is officiated. If they let them play, if they throw flags on both sides, if they just kind of swallow a whistle, which ultimately I think come playoff time, we'd all like to see them just swallow their whistle and let these guys play.
We know what these two teams can do, and I know it's two different versions of the teams that produced the 13-second game, the instant classic, all those years ago, just a few years ago. One of
Uh-huh.
the things that's impressed us on the show with the Bills this year is firstly it's almost a team of no stars if you subtract Josh Allen from the equation, which obviously you can't on offense. But also how clean they've been, how mature they are, and how they play. If you looked at how they
Mm.
played the Ravens last weekend, they stood toe to toe, but they let the Ravens make the fatal mistakes in the end, and they played clean football in very difficult conditions, and that's why they're in the championship game.
Yeah, you're 100% right. They didn't make any mistakes. Um, and it's the old Bill Belichick. Before you can win, you got to learn how not to lose. And when you make mistakes, when you make critical mistakes in critical moments, that's what costs you games. And so playing smart, playing clean football, not turning the football over, understanding the value of possessing the ball, all those things are incredibly important. And, for me, it's really becomes how well, part of that is how well do we run it? And when we run it that well, because if you can run it that well, then you throw the ball when you want to, not because you have to. When you throw the ball because you have to, you turn the ball over. But when you throw it when you want to, then it changes the dynamic of pass rush. It changes if I throw the ball on first down and we've been running the heck out of the ball, you know what you're not doing? You're not rushing the passer. You're defending the run, and then you're like, oh shoot, now they're throwing it. Now I've got to restart. Well, if I make you restart in today's game, you're done. It takes you effectively out of one pass rush opportunity. And if you're a good play caller, if you're a really good play caller, let's say an average game is 35 dropbacks. If you're a really good play caller and you know how to run the football and do all those things, that 35 dropbacks with 3-step drops and 5-step drops without hitches and all those different things that we do, the 7-step drops off a play pass where we have 7 or 8 man protections. If you get to the point where you're a really good play caller, you ultimately give that defense legitimately maybe 12 pass rush opportunities. Now, if we're really running the ball and we're changing it up and we're throwing when we want to, all of a sudden that 12 pass rush opportunities, I all of a sudden hit you with a play action, or all of a sudden and you have to restart your pass rush. Well, now I've whittled it down to 8 or 7. And if we can't hold up in 7 dropbacks, then we suck. Like so, I always tell people, like, I could build if you dumped a bunch of lumber off to me and asked me to build you a deck and you dropped a bunch of lumber and a hammer, I could build you a deck, but I would suggest you not stand on it because it's going to collapse, right? And it's
Yeah.
not going to look very good. But, so that's the same thing for pass protection. You have to give me the right tools so that I can pass protect, so that I can keep people off my quarterback. So if you're going to ask me to build that deck, you got to give me a hammer, you got to give me nails, you got to give me a saw, you got to give me a level, right? And then I can build you a beautiful deck that is stable, that you can stand on, you can entertain on, you can barbecue on, right? But you can't do it if you just dump lumber in my yard and say, "Hey, go ahead and build me a deck." Yeah, it doesn't work that way. And so that's the value of play calling and understanding how to be a great play caller. And that's, to me, like what you have to do. And that's what the Bills have done this year with Joe Brady. And like I had a long conversation with Joe Brady when he came in the league out of college, out of LSU, to coach the Carolina Panthers. And honestly, the college game and the NFL game are so different when it comes to running the football. And he failed. And we had a long conversation about running the ball. And when he came back in the league, he has really kind of embraced, not that I had anything to do with it, but embraced on the understanding of running the ball. It's the same conversation I've had with Cliff Kingsbury in Washington, like really understanding the value of it and how to do it, because the hash marks are different. There's no wide side of the field. There's a different game, and you've got to adjust kind of what you do based on what works in the NFL. And so to watch those guys kind of have some failures along the way and revamp their game and understand how that offense actually pertains to the National Football League is kind of cool to watch.
Mark, before we wrap, I know you were saying at the top of our conversation that you'd gathered the grandkids round and you'd taken the opportunity to look up Ireland on the map and talk a little bit about Ireland. One of the things we're looking forward to in the next couple of weeks, fingers crossed, and the rumour mill has been churning, but we're hoping that the NFL is going to announce a game in Dublin, possibly as early as this year. And we'd love if you'd come over for that game, even when it happens. I hope we'll see you in Ireland at some time, because it's something we've been looking forward to greatly on the Irish NFL show. And as a football community over here, it'd be great to have you if and when that happy day does
I,
arrive.
I would love to do that. I would love to come to Ireland and be a part of the NFL experience in Ireland. That would be a really cool thing for me. And um, anyhow, it'd be an awesome thing. So I'd love to do that with you guys. It'd be great. Maybe we do a whole fantasy football thing and make it a party. That would be an unbelievable weekend.
Well, from your lips to Roger Goodell's ears, we can only hope, Mark. I know you've got grandkids to hang out with, and you got a great weekend in Tampa, including, of course, those 2 championship games to look forward to from the
Yeah.
comfort of your couch on Sunday. I thought I was excited about them before we started talking, but thanks so much for taking us right down to field level. You always really build the excitement. Been an absolute pleasure to have you back on the Irish NFL show. Want to remind everyone to check out your podcast as well, Sinking Truth with Mark Schlereth. Always a pleasure. Thanks again for joining us.
My pleasure, man. Be well out there. What time is it in Ireland right now, so I can tell the grandkids?
It's 20 to 4 in the afternoon. It's
Uh,
3:42.
okay. All right. Awesome. All right. All the best to you guys. Thank you so much for having me, man. It's always a pleasure. Anytime, just hit me up.